everybody, James O'Brien here. Welcome to Stream City Radio, streamcity.org, and Stream City Sports on the YouTube side of things. And did a show yesterday, college football fix show that we do, talking about revenue sharing. Invite you to listen to that one. If it's a radio show, it'll be the second half of the show. We're going to replay that this afternoon. But if you didn't catch that one, we're kind of breaking down revenue sharing amongst the NCAA. It's one of the things that's been floated out there. It's one of the things that needs to happen if you want to. Here's the question you have to ask yourself. There's a couple questions you need to have. You have to ask yourself as a college football fan. Are you really a college football fan, or are you just a fan of your team or your particular conference? Because there's a difference. And what you're going to want is going to be different. If you are one of these non-traditional college football fans where you would like to see the NCAA just basically turn into NFL light, then you and I are not going to see eye to eye. That is the last thing I want. That is not good for college football. College football will not survive going down that road. Yes, they'll make a lot of short-term money, but it will not have, at the end of the day, you are now lining yourself up to compete directly with the NFL, and you can't do it. Because you're going to lose the people who are true college football fans, and that those people aren't necessarily NFL fans. And the NFL fans you might be trying to cater to bring them up. I equate this to what NASCAR did. Instead of NASCAR building on the niche that they had and continue to create the monster that was growing, they decided that they would go after new fans and prioritize bringing in new fans. That has blown up in NASCAR's face. There's no debating it. It is the case. Kind of that same crossroads right now with college football, and what you hear some of the talking heads talk about of, we need to just take the top 30 or 40 teams and create a league and let them play it off and everybody else can do their own thing. Will not, cannot, and won't work. And with only a 30-minute segment of the show, can't really give you all the reasons why it won't work, but you lose all the traditions. You lose all the things that make college football great if you decide this is the road you want to go down to, and it will blow up in your face. It will absolutely blow up in your face. So while I think there needs to be some restructuring among college football, and we need to have somebody running college football, there's a lot that you can take away from the NFL and its model that will make college football successful, but you can't be a copycat model of the NFL. That will never work. The product on the field of the NFL will always be better because it's a smaller pool of talent than what you're dealing with in college football, period. So, and it's a more refined pool of talent. So, head-to-head on the field, you're not going to get it done. So, where you're the NCAA or college football, ban the NCAA, do away with them, you better understand the things that make you different, the things that make you better than pro football, and you take that ball and run with it. That's where I think we have an issue with some of the people trying to control college football, i.e. Tony Petitti and the Big Ten, who doesn't really seem to have. Here's the problem. We need an NFL model. He's trying to bring a Major League Baseball model, and nobody does mass media worse in major athletics than the MLB. I mean, it's one of the things that's got the MLB falling behind basketball and hockey coming up quickly behind it. Heck, soccer's going to catch it at the rate they're going. They are mismanaging everything in the way they handle things with MLB, and part of it revolves around TV deals and the lack of one, revenue sharing and the lack thereof, and no salary cap. Those three things are the polar opposite of what you have in the NFL, and the NFL does it better than anybody. So if you're the NCAA stepping out of the way and handing this thing over to somebody who is actually qualified to run it, it needs to be done more of an NFL model. But that's structurally, yes. But outside of that, no. You need to understand the differences in the two sports and what makes one better than the other. and what draws in fans, what keeps fans, and all those things. So talk about some of that in the next show. But if you love college football, it is going to eventually take some revenue sharing to make this whole thing work. You can't continue to go down this road where it is just the haves and the have-nots. You can't do it. And the reality is, it's not even good for the haves. It's great in the short term, but right now the Big Ten and the SEC are like a couple of heroin junkies on the street getting their fix, and they're happy, and they're not seeing the destruction falling around them that will eventually consume them. And that's where we're headed with college football, unless somebody gets control of this. So I would invite you to watch the podcast that dropped on Friday and to listen to the second half of the show. There you go. Anyhow, so I don't want to go too deep into that. What I did want to talk about, I know the Big Ten has floated this ridiculous 2014 playoff out there, and I haven't looked at the details. I can see the number. No, I don't like it. There's too many teams involved. You don't need that many teams involved. What we need to have is a maximum of 20, but my thing would be to do 16-team playoff, but do 2 of them. You could make this happen next year, 26-27 season. This could happen, where you have 2 16-team playoffs, one for the Power 5 or Power 4, and one for the Group of 5, which I think by then would be a Group of 4 because of the way you would structure this. Basically, very simple. Right off the top of my head, 16-team playoff. This part will not be loved by the Big Ten or the SEC. 4 teams from each of the 4 power conferences. Why? Because it's a playoff. And what we're after here is a playoff, not a made-for-TV tournament that we're dealing with right now. Because what we have right now is, it's better, I guess, than what we used to have, but it's still a tournament, and it's still an invitational. And I've got a scoreboard. I see winners and losers. I don't need a committee. This is not synchronized swimming. I don't need somebody judging the quality of your dive to decide where you finish in this thing. This is not a beauty contest. If a team performs, they're in. If a team doesn't, they're out. Kind of like every legitimate sport in the history of mankind. If you have a scoreboard, you have winners and losers, and I don't need committees and I don't need judges. And if you have judges and committees, that tells me right there you have somebody trying to manipulate the system, which is what we have currently in the SEC and the Big Ten, trying to ensure they get more of their teams in. Now, I did a whole breakdown of the conference strength. And that would be Producer Blue in the background, making his presence known. The reality is the SEC, if you play all the numbers out, and this is not opinion-based, this is based off of wins and losses and numbers and putting a weighted schedule together, the SEC is still the best conference. The Big 12 actually weighed out a little bit better than the Big 10, so the Big 10 can take their arrogance and stuff it in their back pocket for a moment, thinking they're the end-all, be-all. Yeah, you've got 3 national championships in a row. Hats off to you. Can't take anything away from you about that. But top to bottom, regular season, the numbers do not say you're the strongest conference. What it does say is the ACC is by far the weakest. That said, I would prefer to leave a 5th place SEC or Big Ten team out of this, and because you're 5th, you don't belong in it. Sorry. The SEC should not have had 5 in this year. Shouldn't have. Played out that way. Conference championships have to go away. Done. Finished. 16-team playoff. Let Army Navy play the week after the regular season, and then let the playoffs commence. Play the first 2 rounds on campus, and then you can go to bowl sites if you wish. I don't care if you play the first 3 rounds on campus. But it doesn't add a lot of ball games for the championship team over what we had this year. So, matter of fact, the champion would not be playing any more games than what Miami played this year. So, or for that matter, Indiana played the same number of games. But we're involving 4 more teams. We're giving the group of 5 their own playoff, which I think it works out better for everybody. Even though the numbers don't say that Group of 5 teams perform on a very much level playing field with Power 5 teams making their first appearance in the playoffs. The numbers are there. The average loss by a first-time Power Conference team that is playing a team that played in the playoffs prior is 21.5 points. The average loss by a Group of 5 team playing for the first time in the playoffs against a team that has been in the playoffs prior is 22.5 points. There's a 1 point difference. It's almost the same. The reality is first-year teams playing teams that have been there don't do well, whether it's a Group of 5 or Power 5. But give the Group of 5 a real opportunity to win a championship, and this would do that. So take the top 4 teams from every conference, put them in different pods where they don't see each other until you have the Final Four. This is the first time you could play somebody else from your conference. To me, that adds a ton of intrigue. You're not seeing teams that you played during the regular season. We had way too much of this in this last playoff, where I think we had 3 rematches, and that was in the first 2 rounds. Enough. We don't need that. Let's and you want to add the conference bragging rights? Drop an SEC team, an ACC team, a Big Ten, and a Big 12 team all in 4 different pods and let them play it out. Now you got some conference bragging rights. We can have a lot of fun with that. So, to me, that's what makes sense for a short term. That's not the long-term fix for this, but that is a good short-term fix. And, tell the Group of 5, hey, if you've got 16 or more teams, you're going to get 4 automatic invites. Otherwise, we're going to have to, give you fewer, because you don't have enough teams, and you'll have 4 conferences before you can turn around twice. That to me is a no-brainer. I think the American Conference would have to go add 1 or 2 teams. The same with the MAC, the Pac-12, and the Mountain West probably would join forces, which probably should have happened already. It streamlines everything, makes it fairly easy. But I mean, that way, so your 4 conference championship games take place you've got your 4 number 1 seeds, 1 from each conference, hosts the 4 number 4 seeds, 1 from each conference. You do the same thing with the 2s and the 3s, and you play it out. And, what would you have had this past year? In the ACC, you'd have had Duke. Yeah, I know their record was terrible, but they played well inside the conference. Played better outside the conference, and nobody's got an issue with Duke being in the conference championship game. It was their performance outside the conference that put them behind the 8 ball in this. So you get Duke, you get Virginia, you get SMU, you get Miami. That's your 4 teams that go in, and strangely enough, Miami's your 4 seed because that's the way it played out. So you would have Duke and Virginia hosting games, SMU and Miami on the road. If you based it off of, you pick some formula to decide how you want to decide the rankings of the conferences. What I don't want is a committee. What I don't need is polls determining it, because that stuff's all opinion. We've got a scoreboard. I don't need your opinion. Opinions are for arguments. This is the place for opinions. Opinions do not belong on a ball field. What belongs on a ball field is teams that earn their spot. And that is the last thing right now. That is my aggravation, has been my aggravation for decades with the powers that be in college football. They have no desire to really make sure we're crowning the best team. What we have is the power brokers have a huge desire to line their pockets. So that's how we end up with the crap we end up with. So, that being said, the Big 12 would have ended up with Texas Tech, BYU, Utah, and I've got either Houston, Arizona, or Arizona State. Houston had the best record, so we'll say it's Houston. They all had the same record in conference. So without digging in too deep to who the tiebreakers would be. So Texas Tech, BYU would both host games. Utah and Houston would be on the road. The SEC, or the Big Ten, would be Indiana, be Ohio State, it'd be Oregon, it would be USC, with Indiana and Ohio State hosting games, and Oregon, USC on the road. The SEC would end up with, keep in mind, no championship game, so Alabama's the 1 seed, Georgia's the 2 seed. They get home games. Texas A&M and Ole Miss are on the road. Oklahoma's not in. So that's what you have. So you would, and you could, it could rotate. It doesn't really matter once you place the teams in there, what falls where. If you wanted to say, okay, the Big Ten won the Natty the year before, we're going to make them the 1. We'll make the SEC the 2. We'll make the Big 12 the 3, and we'll make the ACC the 4. Okay, fine, that works. So Indiana's the 1 seed. They get Miami at home week 1 of the playoffs. Then you would have the 2 seed from the Big 12, which would be, in this case, BYU, hosting the 3 seed from the SEC, which in this case would be Ole Miss. So you've got a quadrant with Indiana, Miami, Ole Miss, and BYU in it. Well, that don't suck. I think you might sell a few tickets. That might put a few eyeballs on the TV. Okay, so now we go to the Alabama regional, basically, you could say. So you get Alabama at home. They're going to get the Big 12's number 4 team. So Houston's coming to Alabama. You're going to have the number 3 and the number 4 out of the Big 10 and the ACC. The Big 10. The Big 10 and the ACC. So you get the number 2 team out of, the number 2 team out of the ACC, which would be SMU coming in, playing the number 3 team out of the Big 10, which is Michigan. So you got a quadrant with SMU, Michigan, Houston, and Alabama in it. Now we're going to go look at the quadrant with, and I'm just throwing these together, where Duke is the 1 seed. So Duke gets to play USC, and then you would have, say, Georgia and Georgia and Utah. Well, that's not a bad little quadrant either. And you know what? Hey, Duke's the number 1 team out of the ACC. What are you complaining about? You got 3 teams in there? Let it play out. Everybody was all in favor of Virginia. Duke beat the crap out of them in the conference championship game. Who's to say a team like that can't win 1 or 2 games in a playoff setting? Okay, and that leaves you with your final set. Texas Tech, going to be the 1 seed in this ball game. They're going to get the 4 seed out of the SEC, which in this case would be Ole Miss. Ole Miss 3 or 4. Texas A&M. It'd be Texas A&M. So Texas A&M plays Texas Tech. No, nobody would want to see that. Yeah, no, heaven forbid we have that game happen. And then you end up with SMU. No, we've already used SMU. It would be it would be SMU. I think I used SMU in the wrong place. Anyhow, it'd be Virginia. Virginia taking on the number 3 Virginia and Michigan. So anyhow, what's wrong with that? That, to me, that works. And maybe I got some of the combinations wrong, but you're getting the drift of what I'm talking about. Take the top 4 teams from every conference, put the same tiebreakers on every conference. Because here's what we've got going on. You're going to see less and less of the situation with Duke because there's fewer and fewer non-conference games being played. The SEC's going to 9, the Big 12 and the Big 10 have already been there. The ACC's transitioning to 9. So that situation where you got a team with a really bad non-conference record is not going to happen as often. But this, to me, this is a short-term fix that gives us a real live playoff 1 year removed from now. And then you end up with, the team from the, you'd have Tulane, North Texas, Navy, and South Florida all in out of the American Conference. Out of the Conference USA, Kennesaw State, Jacksonville State, Western Kentucky would be contenders to be in this because it's going to get jumbled up. Some of these teams are going to go. Those teams would probably be in. I don't think it would make it down to a Louisiana Tech. I don't think they were good enough. UConn would be in a conference. They would be in. That's the other thing we left out. Notre Dame's got to go into some conference, so they'd be involved in this. So take out the bottom team from whatever conference they joined. The Mid-America Conference, Western Michigan, Ohio, Toledo, and Miami of Ohio would have been in. The Mountain West, Boise State, New Mexico, San Diego State, UNLV. I think if you combine them through Washington State, Oregon State in there, Washington State might edge out one of those teams, but basically that's who you'd end up with in there. The Sun Belt, you've got James Madison, Old Dominion, and Troy State. So by the time I think the conference probably goes away in that situation. It's Conference USA. I think the Big 12 and the Pac, whatever they are, not the Big 12, the Mountain West. The Mountain West and the Pac, whatever, would combine. Conference USA probably gets divided up amongst the Mid-America Conference, the American Conference, and the Sun Belt. It's the smallest, it's the most likely to get rated, and the Mid-America Conference has just been what it's been forever. The Sun Belt's become a very strong conference. The American is a very strong conference. Right now, the two that to me are on the shakiest ground are Mountain West and the Pac-10, along with Conference USA. It would make sense for the Pac and the Mountain West to combine. Takes care of that situation, and then Conference USA just gets devoured by the other conferences. Anyhow, this is a short-term fix. If you like a longer-term fix, listen to the College Football Fix, which we air every Wednesday, and we have an episode of that coming up here on the radio station this afternoon, and then the second half of this show. Enjoy your day, my friends.